Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Now, my friend and I will present about the session 8 about culture shock. First, my friend Rika will present about the unpacking culture shock and the characteristic of the culture shock. And then Villa will present about the pros and cons of culture shock and approaching culture shock. And me will present, Zarsal Sabila will present intercultural adjustment, developmental patterns. Khairunisa will present the revised W-shaped adjustment model and culture shock, peaks, and valleys. Last but not least, my friend Stephanie Alcita, she will present the re-entry culture shock and resocialization different returnness profiles. First, my friend Rika will present about the unpacking and characteristics.
Culture shock is a mismatch of different elements that results in a pattern that doesn't function harmoniously for society. People who are not ready to accept the changes that occur, the community experiences culture shock. This culture shock can cause people to be left behind and frustrated if people cannot immediately adjust to the changes that occur. Usually, there are unique feelings that arise in a person or society after entering a new culture. An anthropologist named Obert believed that culture shock produces an identity disorientation state, which can bring about tremendous stress and pressure on the well-being of an individual. Culture shock involves a sense of identity loss and identity deprivation with regard to value, status, profession, friends, and possession. Identity strain as a result of the effort required to make necessary psychological adaptation. Identity rejection by members of the new culture. Identity confusion, especially regarding role ambiguity and unpredictability. And identity powerlessness as a result of not being able to cope with the new environment. There are 4 signs of culture shock from my opinion. First, constantly having negative thoughts and comparing. Second, starting to get frustrated, easily angry with social pattern. Third, feel alienated from the surrounding. Fourth, begin to lose self-identity and person characteristic.
Pros and cons of culture shock have both positive and negative effects. The negative effect includes 3 major issues. The first one is cosmetic problems such as headache, stomach. The second, affective upheaval consisting of feeling of loneliness, isolation, depression, drastic mood swing, and interaction awkwardness. The third, cognitive exhaustion caused by difficulty to making accurate attribution. On the other hand, culture shock have a positive effect if you have effectively and following positive effect on the newcomer, such as a sense of well-being and heightened positive self-esteem, emotional richness, and enhanced tolerance for ambiguity, behavioral competence in social interaction, cognitive openness and flexibility, enhanced optimism about self, other, and the everyday surrounding. Approaching culture shock, underlying factor. The factors have been found influence why people manage their culture shock experience, such as emotional orientation, personal expectation, cultural distance, physiological adjustment, social cultural adjustment, communication competence, and personality attributes. Personal expectation have long been viewed as crucial factor culture shock management process. Is to refer to anticipatory process, predictive outcome of the oncoming situation. It's like realistic expectation facilitate intercultural adaptation, and accuracy-based positive expectation is adaptation stress. Cultural distance factor it include difference in cultural value, language, verbal style, non-verbal gesture, learning style, decision-making style, and conflict negotiation style, as well as in religious, socio-political, and economic system. And psychological adjustment refer to feeling of well-being and satisfaction during cross-cultural transition. Positive situational appraisal strategy involves changing people perception, interpretation of the stressful event of situation. The last in the intercultural communication is referred to culture-sensitive knowledge, motivation to adapt, the activation of appropriate and effective communication skill, and people to mastery culture-based contextual rules, and the assessment of conjuring outcomes between intercultural communicators.
My name is Zarsal Sabila, and now I will present about the intercultural adjustment. The phrase intercultural adjustment has been used to describe the short and medium term adaptation process that sojourners go through when on assignment aboard. Tourists vary from sojourners in that they are visitors who spend more than 24 hours away from their home, and who travel with the goal of taking a voluntary or recreational vacation. On the other hand, are the transitory residents who migrate to another country for a sad period of time, usually for job or for another reason. Both tourists and sojourners might be affected by the culture shock, especially if the place that they are visiting is different from their own country. While visiting another country, a tourist can be a welcome guest or an outright intruder in sacred territory. Tourists, their hosts, and business service provides all collaborate to create lasting memory, trade items, and share unforgettable memory through brief meeting and engaging interaction. Sojourners are those who commit a temporary residential stay in another culture in order to achieve both instrumental and socio-emotional goals. During their sojourning experience, socio-emotional goals pertain to relational, recreational, and personal development goals. A business person might accept 3 to 5 years aboard assignment. A missionary may stay for a longer amount of time, while the military personnel are frequently assigned to be shorter for daily tours of duty overseas. Currently, over 600 international students are enrolled in various U.S. universities with the express purpose of earning their college degree. Approximately 2,000 more U.S. students participate in one-year study abroad program across the country. The United Kingdom, Italy, Spain, France, and China are among the most popular study abroad destinations for the American college student. The number of American students that studying in Chile, South Korea, and Peru climbed by over to 25%, while the top four countries saw a decline in popularity. Beyond the instrumental goals, international exchange sojourners also pursue socio-emotional goals or a fun activities such as developing new friendship with the local student or the host, visiting the local market or the museum, and learning about local history, sport, and folk craft. We can improve our ability to deal with our own and others' changes process by knowing the developmental stage of intercultural adjustment. Model of U-curve adjustment, the sojourner's adjustment process has been conceptualized by a number of researchers from the diverse developmental viewpoints.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello, my name is Khairunisa. So in this video, I want to explain about the revised W-shape adjustment model and culture shock, mixed embodies. So the first, I want to explain the revised W-shape adjustment model consists of 7 stages, but in here, I just want to explain 5 stages. It is the honeymoon, hostility, humorous, insane, and ambivalence. So the model, uh, the, the model applies especially to international students' experience abroad. In the honeymoon stage, number 1, individuals are excited about their new cultural environment. This is the initial landing pass in which everything appears fresh and exciting. And for number 2 is in the hostility stage. Sojourners experience major emotional upheavals. This is serious culture shock stage in which nothing works out smoothly. This stage can occur rapidly right after the glow of the honeymoon phase is over and reality sets in sooner than expected. At this stage, sojourners experience a major loss of self-esteem and self-confidence. They feel consciously incompetent and emotionally drained in many aspects of their life. Many of these sojourners can either become very aggressive, or hostile or totally withdrawn. And for number 3, at the humorous stage, sojourners learn to laugh at their cultural folks past and start to realize that there are pros and cons in each culture, just as there are both good and evil people in every society. They experience a mixture of stress, adaptation, growth, emotions, such as small frustration and small triumphs. They are able to compare both their home and their host cultures in realistic terms, and they no longer take things seriously as in the uh, hostility stage. They can now take a step backward and look at their own behavior and reactions objectively. And for number 4, these sojourners eventually arrive at the next stage. It is at the insane adjustment stage. Sojourners feel at home and experience identity, security, and inclusion. The boundaries between outsiders and insiders become fuzzier, and sojourners experience social acceptance and support. They, they are now easily able to interpret bizarre local customs and behaviors. They may be savvy enough to speak the local language with flair, even catching some verbal jokes and puns, and perhaps responding with a one-up joke. They become much more creative and adaptive in the new environment. But they must get ready to pack their bags and go home. So the last stages is in the ambivalent stage. Sojourners experience grief, nostalgia, and pride with a mixed sense of relief and sorrow that they are going home. They recall their early awkward days when they first arrived and they count all the new friends they have met since then. They also look forward eagerly to sharing all their intercultural stories with their family members and old friends back home. They finally say goodbye to their newfound friends and their temporarily adopted culture. And the next is culture shock, peaks and valleys. In short, the revives W-shaped adjustment model basically emphasizes the following characteristics which can influence the progress of the sojourner's identity change process. Like number one, in an unfamiliar environment, realizing that the first station and Triumph roller coaster ride is part of the change and growth process. And number two, success in one set of goals, example, making new friends, can affect triumph in another set of goals. Example, newfound friends can help to solve a school-related problem. And for number three, they must give themselves some time and space to adjust. They should keep a journal or blog to express their daily feelings and random thoughts. And then for number four, they must develop both strong ties, as meaningful friendships, and weak ties to cushion themselves and seek help in times of crisis. And for number five, they must reach out to participate in the host culture's major cultural events and learn to enjoy the local culture as much as possible. The patterns of the revised W-shaped adjustment model consist of back and forth looping movements within and between stages. In addition, sojourners adapt and learn at different rates. The support for both model is passed on one-time cross-sectional data, example one-time surveys of sojourners, rather than longitudinal data, example collection of surveys at different points during sojourners 2-year adjustment. Despite some of the limitations of the developmental models, their positive implications are that they offer us a developmental portrait of the culture shock experience, illustrate that the culture shock process is filled with peaks and valleys and contribute to a holistic understanding of the psychological, affective, and identity changes in the new arrivals. Additionally, in the W-shaped model, we are made aware of the importance of understanding the role of reentry culture shock. I think that is all from me. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Reentry culture shock. Reentry culture shock involved the rearrangement of new one of one's new identity with one's familiar home environment. After living abroad for an extensive period of time, reentry culture shock is inevitable. This identity rearrangement process can sometimes be more stressful and jolting than entry culture shock because of unanticipated nature of one's own identity change and accompanying change of one's friends and family. Punch and Lowenthal 1988 further recommend that preparation for a successful return should include 1. The recognition of what sojourners are leaving behind and what they have gained in their assignment aboard, and 2. The emotional costs
of transition. 3. The value of worrying, like anticipating and preparing for difficulties that may occur. And 4. The need for support system and ways to develop them. And 5. The necessity of developing one's own strategy for going home. Socialization, different returners profiles. The proactive returners are highly awareness of change in themselves and the new values and skills they have learned overseas. They try to integrate the new values and learn from the sojourning culture into the home culture and develop an integrated outlook in their entry phase. While aboard, the proactive managers tend to use proactive communication to maintain close ties with the home organization via formal and informal means. They also have a home-based mentor to look after their interests and pass on important corporate information. Their mentor keeps the home-based headquarters informed of the sojourner's achievement while aboard. Proactive manager might report the acquisition of the following skill in their assignment aboard: alternative managerial skills, tolerance of ambiguity, multiple reasoning perspective, and ability to work with the manage others. They further report that the new skill improved their self-image and self-confidence. Not surprisingly, returners who receive validation, especially like promotion from their bosses and recognition from their colleges, report higher reentry satisfaction than do returners who receive no such validation or recognition.